we can start by just quickly introduce ourselves. I'm Gabriel, and I've been working with this field since the mid-90s. That's also where Jesper and I met at Ericsson, and for a few years built up the corporate competitive intelligence operations in that group. And since then, we've been colleagues in Martell, and later on, I've been working with a company called Insion. That's me.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jesper Martell. I'm the CEO of a Swedish software company called Martell, and we actually produce and deliver solutions for market and competitive intelligence. And as Gabriel, I've been working with this for a long time. We've known each other since the days back at Ericsson. And I was just reflecting on what Håkan, one of the participants, said, how much easier it is to write a book when you're not writing it on your own. So I think that the sort of the teamwork between Gabriel and me has worked out really well in the creation of this book. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been a long journey, but it's been a lot of fun as well.
And I think it's also a good time to take the opportunity to say thank you to Håkan for your initial and very good training of us as authors. We really needed that. So Håkan, thank you very much for that. That was great. Okay, so let's start. We think as a very sort of initial introduction here, it's just what is market and competitive intelligence? Because there are some misconceptions. Some people don't really know what it's all about, but it really boils down to the key capability in a company of being able to understand your business environment. As we write here, it focuses on the external environment to identify threats and opportunities, and also to make sure that you can pick up on any sort of signals that might feed into your scenario planning or areas looking forward. And the big question is now what is going to happen tomorrow? That is what's going to coming out of market and competitive intelligence. What happened yesterday isn't really that interesting. And one way of illustrating this is to use the Porter forces. You can do it in different ways, but that's a good one, where you have a number of different areas that will need your intelligence. So for instance, the strategy, threat of new entrants, the unknown. How can I keep track of people that I'm not prepared for coming into our arena? Substitutes, the innovation intelligence. How are other people doing in their R&D fields? Are they launching new products that we're not prepared for? The supplier intelligence, tremendously important in many different industries. We see the effects now post-pandemic, where suppliers simply are just, they're not there yet. The semiconductor problem right now, for instance, is a very good example. And customer intelligence, which is probably one of the most important factors of all. Will customers keep buying our products, or will they switch for other products? And all these different sort of powers, they all boil into, of course, the rivalry, as Porter says in the middle, the industry rivalry, which is the competitive intelligence. So it shouldn't be mistaken for competitor intelligence. It's really a question of making sure you are the most competitive player on the industry or on the market that you're operating. So that very quickly as a background on what is the strategic capability in the organizations that the book focuses on. Jesper, shall you?
Yeah, so why did we decide to write a book about this? Well, as Gabriel said, competitive intelligence usually has a lot to do with monitoring the environment, keeping track of what competitors are doing. That often entails sort of doing competitor benchmarks, SWOT analysis, scenario analysis, a lot of analysis work. And that's what most of the books in this area are typically about as well. How to do analysis, also how to find good information sources, and where do you find the best research, and they sort of tend to be a bit more about the information side of things and the people side of things. How do you build a network of analysts? But already sort of going back to the Ericsson days, we were really lacking a book that dealt more with the technology side of things. How do you build a technology platform for market and competitive intelligence? And that's actually the subtitle of the book as well, Building Robust Market and Competitive Intelligence Platforms. So I think that's where we saw that there was a lack, and also a lack of a book that explains why it's important for executives and decision makers, but also how to actually do it. So it's more of a practical hands-on guide, I'd say, in how to do it and why it's important, both of those combined in one book. And it's the book I think we wished we would have had when we were back at Ericsson. And also a book that I hear that a lot of our customers would like to have as well. How do you actually succeed with implementing this kind of technology? Because it is sort of a niche area.
Yeah, and also I think what we could add, as you see on this slide, is that some books like this are either targeted to practitioners and those are actually going to do the nuts and bolts, and others are focusing on the senior executive level. But we've really done our best to make sure that this book could be used by both camps, if you like. So for people that are looking forward to implement something like this that need a budget, they should be able to take the book, go to the executives with a budget mandate and say, hey, we need to do this. And it should be sort of comprehensible for them as well. So, but what about the book then? We got 4 parts in this book. The first one, we call it A Wild-Grown Landscape, is essentially painting the background, a little bit more in detail what it is, as we talked about right now, but also how things are changing. There's a number of factors that are changing that have a direct impact on the competitive intelligence operations, the organization. Putting something like this in place, one should know that it's a change management project. It's not just you take a piece of software and you put it in there. You need to know that there are other things that goes with that in terms of roles and things like that. We'll come into that a little bit more. But the wild-grown landscape is really, what do we see out there that is changing and that puts more and more pressure on new approaches on the intelligence?
Yeah, so I think I'd say that the first part is very much why you need a tool like this, and then the second part, growing a garden, actually is perhaps the key part of the book. It explains sort of what the model is that we're proposing. So growing a garden introduces this 6-step model that we'll come back to, which is the core part of the book, and explains how you go through the different steps to sort of build your blooming garden of intelligence. So this is a key part of the book.
And essentially supporting that part too, as Jesper said, the growing a garden part is really the entire model with the different steps. Then we have a part 3 that consists of 6 chapters, 2 chapters for each of the ITPs that we'll come back to, but that you will then use as much more in-depth reference. And how do I really do whatever is sort of suggested in part 2, very much as a handbook.
And then the final 4th part is really the now what? Once you have a guardian of intelligence that helps you produce insights, how can that then be used to help in decision making? Whether it be sort of to make you find early warning signals or build scenarios for the future. How do you actually use all the insights that the Guardian has given you to make you a healthier organization?
I think it can be worthwhile saying here also that one challenge that we've seen that many organizations end up in is that it becomes very inward looking. And that is what the part 4 really addresses, that it can't be inward looking because then you don't provide the value to the strategy and marketing part of the organization that is all supposed to do. So that's a key part. So the 6 levels. Jesper, would you like to take this or?
Well, we can take maybe one level each.
Let's do it.
I think we're not going to go through. I'm not going to go through into sort of details, but just to give you an idea of what it looks like. This is based on our experience from hundreds of organizations, what has worked and what hasn't worked in building a market and competitive intelligence platform. So typically, you start by sort of locating where you want to put your seeds. This is really where you define the purpose of the tool and where you identify the need and who is going to be the target group of this. And you start sort of planting, start growing your sprouts. Typically, the easiest way to do this, and that most organizations start with, is organizing their information and making sure that they get sort of all the external news that they have. So a lot of focus on connecting external information sources in this early level and organizing or categorizing them into topics, either sort of manually or automatically. but just making sure that you have this foundation that you can start to build upon.
Yes, and the whole thing is, we will discuss that in the next step, but we're looking at in each of those steps, the locating, planting, and cultivating. We're looking at the three different factors: the information, the technology, and the people. And in the planting, it's very much technology and information, still quite inward looking. And there are many organizations that actually they stop at the sprouts level because they're happy there. It's sufficient for them as they feel it. But what we then want to do is, of course, to extend the usage. And as we discussed before, it really has to have an impact. And the cultivating part, that starts involving people much more than the first two steps. This is where you distribute analytical power or analytical capability in the organization. You move that out so you can get more information into your operation. And then taking further to the spreading part, that's back a little bit again to the technology where we start making more and more use of automation, technology, analytical tools, etc. in a platform. But all this has to be done step by step. I think it's also worthwhile mentioning here that those 6 steps are not just here by coincidence. All of these steps are, as we experience, sort of capability levels that organizations can stop at and rest for some time, because it takes time, very much time, to go from seeds all the way up to blooming gardens. As I said, it's a change management project, but sometimes companies just stop in the middle of 2 of those, and that typically is not a very good idea, because you're lacking momentum, you don't reach your goals, you can't show the value of what you just been doing.
But at the same time, I think you don't need to sort of go through all the steps in order to get value from your intelligence platform. It will still help you, even sort of when you just have sprouts. It still has value for organizations, especially if you don't have anything. If you're just Googling stuff, then this is at least better than that. So I think that's worthwhile mentioning.
I think that was, I would try, good Jesper, that was the point I was trying to make, that on each of those levels, you have leveled out on a plateau where you can rest while you're still providing additional value compared to the group. Yeah.
No, and then taking it further, sort of once you've started spreading it or distributing it using sort of alerts and dashboards and things like that. This is also where I think a lot of organizations start leveraging artificial intelligence and machine learning, so that they can handle much larger volumes of information, and also start using more analytical tools so they can start visualizing information patterns. I think what we see in the beginning here is people are monitoring things that they already know they should be looking at, like the quarter 5 forces that we started off with. But here, when you come up sort of in flower beds and burgeoning into shrubberies, then your intelligence platforms can actually start becoming even more intelligent, starting to show you things that you might even not know that you're looking for. You discover sort of signals and patterns in the information that help you identify early warning signals, basically. And then I think the last step, if you want to go into that as well, but I think once you find these signals, then you want to be able to not just leave it at that. I've sort of monitored and I've discovered stuff, but what do you actually do with that is probably the last step.
And if we look at the different sort of development steps here, the harvesting, when we're at the shrubberies, the technology platform is done, it's ready. The last step is entirely people-based, and I used to compare that when you come to the blooming garden with the old sort of quality processes that were eventually embedded into the organization. You just have your quality process everywhere, and I mean, our thesis is that that's essentially where market and competitive intelligence should end up as well. It should be a part of any sort of decision process, any team. It should just be a standard way of thinking, and the tools that we put in place should support that standard way of thinking. And that's the last step, making sure that the organization is developing that final capability to understand their market, essentially, which is what it's all about.
Yeah, and then we have a couple of key points that we emphasize in the book. Obviously, we go into a bit more detail in the book, but one of the key points is that you need to sort of combine this external and internal information in order to get intelligence. A lot of organizations, and when you look at systems for media monitoring, for example, or web crawling, they're very focused on external information and good at that type of information. And then there are sort of internal systems like business intelligence systems and CRM systems to a certain extent who are very good at sort of tracking what's going on within the organization. But I think the unique thing with intelligence system is really to combine these two, to sort of both have external sources and internal sources, and then get a view of your outside world based on that.
Yep. And also looking a little bit more on what we want to achieve, we want to both monitor, of course, what we know and what we should monitor continuously, as your intelligence management and media monitoring, but also it has to be a tool that helps you discover. So looking into the future with sort of trend radars, insights generation, supporting scenario making, making sure that whatever signals are brought in are matched with the strategy that the company has, so we can tune whatever we're supposed to do, not just what we've done. This is crucial for a value generating MCI operation, and all of that need to be supported by the same intelligence platform. We have even seen companies that try to use different platforms for those two, and it just doesn't make sense as we see it, because I mean they're so intertwined. There should be the same sort of topics, same sort of questions that are being dealt with, but it has to be in the same. So yeah, would you like to comment more on that, Jesper?
No, I think this. I think that the axis here of looking at sort of both in what's happening today, but looking much more at what happens tomorrow, and trying to help you decide which road to take is more what an intelligence platform is, rather than a news collection system. So I think that there's a big difference between people just crawling the web and reading what has already happened, compared to an intelligence system that actually helps you see trends before other people might see them.
We have a tagline that we throw around a bit that you might have seen somewhere now. It's when the future knocks on the door, it tends not to walk away, which is very true. So the more you can be prepared for whoever is going to knock on the door, the better you will be off. Okay, I think that were the slides that we were sort of planning to go through. If there are any questions or comments, you're more than welcome to join in and raise them.
Yes, so thank you. So I actually have a question, which is, let's say you're working in an organization and you have a user who's very comfortable with their existing traditional business intelligence, data warehouse kind of sales reporting system. What would you say to them to convince them to look into marketing competitive intelligence? I mean, what is the value they will gain that they don't have today from their existing system?
Well, if you're using the systems that you just now referred to, that's history. I mean, of course, if you believe that by just doing trend analysis on what has been, that you will understand tomorrow, that would suffice. But we all know that that is not the case. So I mean, that's the argument for making sure you have an MCI system. But the other is also that if we encounter a company where all these different systems are in place, technology-wise, you can also work with trying to get parts of those systems becoming part of their already convenient and well-known dashboards. So technically, we have a number of ways of sort of meeting the requirement of, I don't want a new system, but I need the insights.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. No, and I agree with that. And I think sort of a lot of organizations today, they look at the past and they sort of draw a trend line, and then they expect everything to continue just as it's always been. But I think with so many disruptions going on in the world, people have to be more prepared for things going. It won't just sort of continue in the same pace as it's been before. And that's why I think intelligence systems really play a role in sort of really helping you see unknown things before they happen, or at least early signals of things that are developing.